Well, welcome to the Friday edition of the show, and I am excited for this one. You know, last night, the folks here at CJAD 800, we had a little special event. We got to go to the Bell Center. We had a loge at the Bell Center. Second hour of the show, I am going to tell you what happened at the Bell Center last night while we were there enjoying the game, because a couple of things, got to tell you, that I was a little bit surprised by. And we'll dissect that in an hour, too, because remember last week on this show, during the first hour of the show, we talked about the low attendance figures at the Bell Center. And you guys were chiming in about how expensive the tickets were and all that kind of stuff. They had a good crowd last night. But I think a couple of things happened that may explain the conundrum the Canadians are facing a little bit further. Let's do some paneling, shall we? Joining me on the program this morning on this Friday edition of the panel, it's Trudie Mason. Hi, Trudie.
Good Friday morning after the election.
Whoa! You know what? That is the most, and you always have energy, but that was the most boisterous hello that you've ever given me.
It feels like it's been a long week.
Amazing. Yeah, that's right. We finally get to
it's Friday
Yeah,
now.
It's a detox on that. Absolutely. And he is now a strategic consultant at Syrus, former Liberal cabinet minister, Jean-Marc Fournier. Hi, Jean-Marc.
Good Friday morning before the next election.
And I'll tell you what, we this morning we heard some really critical comments of Andrew Scheer from a conservative candidate in the election. We're going to get to that in a few seconds, but first some stuff from right here at home. It's a big balance. Nothing in life is easy. I quickly have come to that realization, and I think when it comes to solving the city's social housing crisis, that solutions aren't easy. It's either, and solutions are either criticized as being heavy-handed or empty words that don't go far enough, depending on who you listen to. Last night, we heard from private developers and people in the business community about plans that the city has to enforce social housing in projects. And listen, people that are involved in the business community, developers, that kind of stuff, they say, listen, it's too much. If you try and force social housing measures and percentages into when you build in Montreal, what are developers going to do? They're going to go to Laval. They're going to go to South Shore. And you're going to hamper the economic development of Montreal. Where do you stand on this issue? Is, in fact, Projet Montréal and the Plante administration actually doing that right balance? Or have they gone too far in either direction?
I stand right in the middle is where I stand. I acknowledge that cities have the right to determine the makeup of the residential complexes coming in that they have and should have the power to do that, and they should exercise that power for good. But these social housing activists who are saying that what the city is proposing is not enough, I think they're nuts. The way that it stands, between a third and 40% of every new development has to go either to housing that is considered social housing or that goes
large
to market.
Enough, right? Yeah.
It goes or is put on the market below market value. Plus 15% have to be family size. And I actually think when you're a developer coming into the city and seeing that between 35 and 40% of your development is beyond your control in terms of generating a profit, that's too much. Mm-hmm. I don't think it should be all on the back of developers to build social housing in the city. And I think that the costs for that get transferred onto the people who are paying full freight in the same complex. So it ends up being buyers who, it's not like the developer is going to cut profit, right? They're going to find a way to pass along the cost. So I think the city is right to ask developers to include social housing. I find the total of 40% a bit high. 25% I think I could live with, and I don't think that would be so much as to drive developers into the burbs.
But Trudy, I just want to ask you, what's the difference if it's 25 or it's 40? What's the difference if it's 25 or it's 40? Should the city be doing any of that, or should
I think so. I think so. And developers need to be able to make money, because if they can't make money, they will go elsewhere. And I think that the city should look at lowering the percentage to allow the best of both.
Developers will go where the money is.
Yeah.
And if the cost is too much in Montreal because of those new rules, well, of course, they'll go in Brassard or in Longueuil or in Laval and maybe farther than that, maybe up to Saint-Jean and up to Saint-Jérôme. Well, in fact, it's already happening.
Yeah.
And it's already happening because the cost in Montreal is too high. So you're going to put a more burden on that. So at the end, we can be sure that they're going to go outside of the island. And I'm surprised because Projet Montréal is environmentalist, and it's not the way to provoke the l'étalement urbain. So it's like why they are doing that. Of course, because they want social housing. That's a good thing. But you've got to arrive to a point of equilibrium between the amount of money that developer going to pay, but in fact the new buyer is going to pay, and what is supposed, I think, was supposed the recipe before: federal money, provincial money, municipal money, and you build like you should do in Blue Bonnets. I was there in the government 7 years ago when the land of Blue Bonnets was just given to Montreal, and somebody of you went to Blue Bonnets recently? It's 7 years after. It's the same thing, and nothing's happened. I know there's a consultation that will start, but then again, when is supposed to start the construction of new housing? Social housing on a municipal land? That is the place to put there, to put them there, and we're still waiting. So we may talk about new rules, but what's happening with land that already are there and waiting for it?
Is it a question of what kind of Montreal we want in the future? You know, like when we go to Toronto, we see all those condo towers everywhere. You look, condo towers. And by the way, there's been a bit of a transformation in downtown Montreal. How many new gigantic, massive condo towers do we have now in Montreal and Griffintown, right? And I guess as we look forward 10, 20 years down the road, we have to make a decision. What kind of Montreal do we want? Do we want a Montreal where the downtown core is condo tower, and a more prosperous city?
I'm not saying that to do nothing. I'm just saying you've got to have other ways of having money, and I hope that we were just coming out of the election. I hope that the amount of money that are supposed to be given to social housing will be there. There'll be a new deal between federal, provincial, and municipal level. I hope that will be there. You're talking about Montreal and new condos and new towers. Well, 10 years ago, we didn't have nothing. And now it's like there's a booming in Montreal. Let's hope it continue. Let's just hope that we can mix every kind of housing. But to do that, you need pocket not just from those who want to buy, because they're going to go in Saint-Jérôme. You're going to have the money from all citizens, and it's calling about public money at federal and provincial and municipal level.
I was driving in Laval earlier this week, and there was advertisements for new condo developments right off the 13, and it was 3 bedrooms, 2-car garage, $375,000, and I was like, well, geez, look at the developer there, and it was all over the place. You had signs for development, right? So that's what you're competing against, right? At the end of the day, the panel continues. Trudie Mason and Jean-Marc Fournier are in studio with me this morning. I want to quickly touch on this. Give me a short, succinct answer on the city's plans to replace lead water pipes. City's going to replace them. They're also going to send you a bill for the portion that's on your property. So it's going to cost like $2,000 to $5,000 for a homeowner, but they will let you pay it off over 15 years if that $2,000, $5,000 is too onerous for you in one shot. They'll let you pay it in 15 years. Guys, what do you think of their plan? Is this a fair plan, all for the betterment of our water?
I think it's a fair plan because basically what it does is ensure that low-income property owners will get new pipes. And heaven knows families these days sometimes struggle to make the mortgage, and thinking that they could just pull $5,000 out of off the tree in the money tree in the backyard to upgrade their pipes because they're worried about lead contamination in their kids. I think we have to understand that what the city here is basically offering is a form of a 15-year loan so they can get it done right away so that they don't have to wait and save up. I think the city is on the right track. This is a public health issue, and the city is going to pay its part, and the private homeowner has to pay their part.
And they're going to have the value for it because their house will have a new pipe. So I agree with Trudie. I think that it's health that is given to citizens. 3
votes to 0, a good plan, and a kudos to Projet Montréal. You see, Projet Montréal, if you listen to me, I don't always knock you. That's a good plan. Bravo, kudos. Let's move on and talk about federal politics. Couple of things. First thing off the bat, let's deal with Andrew Scheer first, shall we? And did you hear Sylvie Frechette, who was a candidate in this election in Rivière. I forget what the name of her riding was. You remember
I think it's near
Saint-Géron
or something like that.
So she was running for the Conservatives. She finished in third place. Bloc Québécois got like 30,000 votes. The Liberals got 18,000, and she got 7,000. Right? She came in third place in that riding. And really, I would say, I listened to her. The knives are out. She said she has more cojones, to put it nicely, more cojones than Andrew Scheer on certain issues, and that he was kind of weak in debates.
More than that, she said that il faisait pitié.
Yeah,
that's the word she used. Il faisait pitié. Hey,
yeah,
that's a tough critic.
It's a tough criticism, and that his social issues, were part of this. Andrew Scheer, for his part, was interviewed by the Canadian Press, and he said he doesn't. He says he doesn't think his personal views on gay marriage, abortion, other social issues hurt his chances in the election. Was he forced to say that? Because if he admitted that his views hurt the party, he'd have to leave the party. Is this him just trying to retain power in making those comments?
Maybe it's wishful thinking. I don't know, but certainly I think his leadership will be in peril. I think, and already we heard about some names. When you start hearing new names just after an election, it's like something, it's something's happening. We are listening or hearing about Madame Mulroney in Ontario. I cannot, and it's not that I heard that name, but I cannot see Jason Kenney not somewhere because he's everywhere. He was a leader of the Conservatives during that election. He was everywhere. So I guess something will happen there.
Well, I think Andrew Scheer thinks this is all a little bit unfair because it didn't hurt Stephen Harper and during his terms in office to have private beliefs that were at odds with.
Because you're right. So what was the difference? Because Stephen Harper, people could say, had similar social views, but it did not hurt him. What's the difference? Is it 10 years later Canada's changed? What's the difference?
I think it's a little bit in what Sylvie Fréchette said this morning in that interview. She said that he was not strong. He was not able to. So if he was not strong, we were not convinced. Citizens were not convinced about a strong stand. Where are you? And Mr. Harper was strong. He said, "I'm for that. I will not do it." Well, you believe it because you say, we know what he means, and I think that's part of what Mr. Scheer has a problem for the future, and that's why we are hearing new names.
Yeah, he's too meek.
Yeah, but you know what? It was also unfair because it was repeated question. How many times can he answer the same question?
It was
the
his
same
fault
way?
because he didn't answer it.
Well,
the first time.
because he kept waffling, and then it came the issue of, well, what if a private member bill was presented by a Tory? What would you do then? So then it started to get complicated, but I still think he was subject to unfair scrutiny on this. For example, did we hear in any of the debates or any of the big events repeated questioning of Jagmeet Singh about how his religious views and values would affect NDP government legislation?
And there was reason to ask that question.
No.
Of course.
Yeah, of course. I think it's fair game. If they're asking Scheer as the Catholic, then yeah, of course you could ask, but of course no one's going to do that because that's going to look intolerant, but they'll absolutely go after the Catholics. So I think there was even in the media, I think there was a very uneven handling of this question. And I'm, Elias, I'm chalking this up to a change in society, a social media, attitude that unless you agree with me 100%, you're not with me.
I just want to point out that Jagmeet Singh did face a year ago lots of questioning about his Sikh faith and some of the appearance of supporting certain people who had ties to terrorism in the Sikh faith, right? So he faced those grillings about a year ago. But you're right. Why didn't it come up again? Right? That could have been an election issue if it was decided to be.
Well, you would think that if it was for the Catholic, it would be for the Sikh.
Yeah.
Well, just to add, you talk about social media. Why not talking about traditional media? Because it's them. First, let's say it's TVA at the first debate, Monsieur Bruno, who put as the first question, that question, and that's a traditional media, and it was a traditional media who were asking repeatedly those questions to Scheer and not to sing. So it's something we've got something to say about that too.
Yeah, but it is true, and journalists, I think, are also part of, deeply involved in some cases in social media, and it's this whole new attitude that if you're not with me, you're against me. If you're not ideologically pure, I will have you deplatformed if it's the last thing I do. It's the complete rejection that someone can simply disagree with you, but nothing will come of it. And that's what Scheer was trying to get across, and he failed.
I agree with you. Nuance is not there.
And I don't want to, I just want to, in the defense of the hardworking journalists in the media, you know, when you get asked these questions, you got to be prepared. And Andrew Scheer was not prepared that night. Okay, let's talk about the defender of Canadian federalism and the defender of our current system, that it will work strongly for 4 years. Yes, I'm talking about none other than Bloc Québécois leader Yves-François Blanchet, who said he doesn't see why this parliament couldn't last for a full 4 years. And you know what? Why not? I mean, if you're Yves-François Blanchet, and I actually think it's a good strategy. If you want to make the case to Quebecers that, hey, I'm not just here for chicane, I'm not just here to, work towards sovereignty, but I just want to fight for Quebec, and I can do it for 4 years in Ottawa and not throw us into another election. I think it actually plays out well for them if they go 4 full years and they can say, this tired line that we hear from the other parties, that the Bloc Québécois is just there to start crap. Why not? If you're Yves-François Blanchet, keep the Liberals alive for 4 years in this case.
But I don't know if the question was asked to him after he said that. The question is, are you going to support the Liberal government at every confidence vote?
Yeah.
And if the answer is no, well, why did you say that at first? Mm-hmm. And I'm pretty sure that the answer will be, oh no, I won't support them. I'll check. I'll decide case to case. That is what the NDP will do. That is, the Bloc will do what others will do. That's the same thing. So yes, of course, he was trying to say I'm a good guy, but clearly he'll do his politics as others will do their politics.
I think he's trying to set it up so that he wins either way. If the government falls after 18 months or 2 years, he can point to it and talk about, malfunctioning federalism. If it goes 4 years, he can say, look, we've been here 4 years and we've had trouble getting what Quebec needs, and you got to send us back for another 4 years. So the guy's going to play it either way, in my view.
He's a slippery fellow, that guy, but he's good. He's good. He's a good politician. Okay, let's talk about the Green Party. Elizabeth May. Elizabeth May says she doesn't think she's going to last 4 years. Okay, she's frank and honest that she's not going to be there in 4 years for the next election. Why are you laughing, Jean-Marc? Tell me.
Well, we talked about that 6 or 7 weeks ago, and the test was for her, and well, the test she didn't pass the test, and she already said, I think yesterday or this morning or yesterday, I guess, she said that she won't be there in 4 years.
Okay, so here's the question though: Green Party of Canada, next leader. Is the next leader even more extreme? Sky is falling. We must act. We have now 5 years. I told you 10 years last week. Now it's 5 years. Do they need to go in that direction? Or does the Green Party need to go in the other direction? Pull back a bit. Where should the Green Party go? And by the way, you know what? They're gonna if they have a leadership convention, they're gonna have to have a leadership convention. You know what? You gotta play to the base. The base isn't probably want to go to extreme. But where should the Green Party go for their next leader?
I think that the danger for the Liberals is that the Green want to be something as liberal green, but the Liberals are in fact NDP. They are all changing place. The reason why Mr. Trudie was elected 4 years ago is because he
outflanked the NDP.
Of course, Mulcair was saying we're going to balance the budget, and he said no. So he became lefter than the NDP, and I don't see the Green trying to be let's say we spend and we don't think about economy. They're going to have to be more pragmatic, have a younger leadership, because if you speak to those who vote for them and want to vote for them, they are 20, 25, 30 years old. In 4 years, you're going to have a bigger bunch of them. I think they can be a force. They have something, but they have to change the leadership, that's sure.
Well, I think Elizabeth May was being frank because she just came off of a bruising election campaign, 40 days, and I think she's very tired. She says she wants to continue being an MP. She just doesn't want to be leader anymore. You know what? I would be looking east to Fredericton, to the newly elected Green Party member there. I think that she may embody the next generation coming up. I don't think getting more radical is going to win them any voters in Canada. Canadians had a chance to vote on that, just this week and said no, it didn't work. So getting more radical, I don't think it demotivates people. It doesn't motivate them. I have some friends who looked at the Green platform and said that once you strip away the environmental stuff, they're to the right of the NDP. They're not really very lefty.
Which goes to what Jean-Marc was saying, was like maybe their play is to become like green liberal, right?
Green liberals, yeah.
There's certainly a possibility for them. And if they've got a leadership, they might have a leadership that make them in the first page so that we can see them more than we saw them for 4 years.
The problem is their name is Green Party, right? So when your brand is Green Party, it doesn't matter if you come up with this great platform that's broad and appeals to everyone. Your name is Green Party. You know what I mean? Like the pot party. You're not going to vote for the pot party thinking now obviously they got their pot for legalized, but you know what I mean? Like if the name of your party has the one issue in it, it's hard to become a broad player.
Well, they had the vote at this election. They had the vote for their names. They didn't have the vote for something else, just for the name. I didn't see their campaign, So if they've got a better leadership, better campaign, more visibility, they are able to propose a new solution for the climate change, thinking about the life of people, because there's a conflict between your way of life, the thing you take the plane, you take your car, but you've got to, and they've got to find something that make them grow their support.
If your name is Green Party, like if I started a party, it was called the Chocolate Cake Party, and I had a great platform, but my name focus was everyone gets free chocolate cake. Like people would just focus on that, and they wouldn't focus on anything else, So I think that's tough. I think it's really tough for the Greens to broaden their reach if they're called the Greens.
Well, if we look at what's happening in Europe, well, they are growing. If you look at the numbers in Canada, they are slowly growing.
Good counterpoint, Jean-Marc. I appreciate that. That's actually a good point. Jean-Marc Fournier right there, Trudie Mason. Guys, have a great weekend.
You too.